Okay, now we're going to talk about percent equations. And if you do the help button on this, it's probably going to explain it different than I am. They have this little, excuse me, formula equation they're going to use, but everyone always gets the A's, the B's, and the P's in the wrong place and can't figure that out. The easiest way is just to read the sentence or the question and write it exactly in math terms as the English says, where the what is always going to be where you put your variable, your x or your n, is always an equal sign, and of is always a multiply. So I can translate this directly into, if I had a pen I could, into what is, now anytime I have a number that's a percent, I've got to change it to a decimal. Since it's a percent, decimal means that direction. So here's my point. If it's not showing, it's right here, 2 places. So 0.03 of 200. And then just solve the simple linear equation. So on this one, all I have to do is multiply 200 times 0.03. Okay, 3 times 0, 3 times 0, and 3 times 2, and then 0. Now, my decimal goes 2 places. So x equals 6. Okay, 18 is what of 90? It's exactly the same every time you read it. Okay, the only difference is my equation will look different. So to solve this, right, all my steps, just one step, I just have to undo this times 90, and we do that by dividing by 90. Okay, so on this one I have x, it's all by itself, equals, and I'm going to reduce this 18/90ths. They're both divisible by 9. 18 divided by 9 is 2. 90 divided by 9 is 9. But be careful. 90 divided by 9 is not 9. 90 divided by 9 is 10. Oh, I could even divide this again, right? But since this says what percent, anytime the number I'm looking for is a percent, my answer needs to be a percent. So I need to take this fraction and change it to a percent. Means my denominator needs to be 100, or I can divide it. But since this is real easy to make the denominator 100, I'm going to multiply this by 10 and this by 10. And then I can just change that per 100 to percent. So x equals 20%. Don't forget, when the what is what percent, here it's just how many dogs, I don't need that. That's just a what number, how many cars. But if the what is a percent, what percent, my final answer has to be changed to the percent form. Okay, so what percent of 2.5 is 0.3? Okay, well, now I've got my equation. I just got to get that x all by itself. So let's divide by 2.5. Let's divide by 2.5. Okay, so now we have x equals 0.3 over 2.5. So because there's a decimal, I cannot mix fractions and decimals, right? I just need to move this one spot. As long as I do the same in both of them, then that's 3 over 25. But don't forget, this one said what percent? Oh, this is another one that's easy to make the denominator 100. If I just multiply by 4, and then a per 100 is the same thing as a percent. Okay, how many How many dogs is 8%, percent to a decimal, so 0.08 of 300. This is just another multiply. The x is already by itself. I just have to do the math. So 300.08. 8 times 0, 8 times 0, 8 times 3. And then this is just zeros down here. 2 digits behind the decimal. So 2 digits behind the decimal in my answer. So x is 24. Okay, 8 is 40% of what? Okay, I got to get the x by itself, so let's divide by 0.40. I can't mix fractions and decimals, so I'm going to move this over 2 times, but I also have to move this over 2 times. So that gives me x equals 800 over 40. Right? 800 over 40, or 80 divided by 4 is 20. So 8 is 40% of 20. Okay, 0.32 of what is 51.2? There's my equation. I just have to get x by itself, so let's divide by 0.32. I can't mix fractions and decimals, so let's move that over 2 times to say it is 5120 divided by 32. Okay, so now I can come over here and do that division, or I can try to make my number smaller. I notice at least both of these are divisible by at least 4. Remember our rules of divisibility? And this is divisible by 4. So if I reduce this, if I divide 4, and you might have to come over here even to do that. If you need to come over here to do that, that's also fine. Okay. Got a 0 to bring down, so I need that placeholder there. So that becomes now 1280 divided by 32 divided by 4 is 8. Oh, look, those are at least even, or they're divisible by 4 again. So I could divide this by 4 again to get 320 over 2, or finally 320 divided by 2 is 160. Three is 0.4. I don't need that 0 at the end. I know we kept it up there just for emphasis. Of how many cars? Get the x by itself. Let's divide by 0.4. If I got to move that decimal 1 time, I've got to move that one 1 time. So now I have x is 30 divided by 4. Okay, well, if I divide both of these by 2, I get 15 divided by 2. Okay, 15 divided by 2, that's 7.5. Now notice on this one, I'm left with a fraction, but it wants to know how many cars. You can't have a half a car, right? So you've got approximately 8. 3 cars is 40% of about 8 cars. Okay, this one's a little trickier. If 10 is increased to 15, the increase, so here's my number, is what percent of the original number? Okay, so the increase 10 increased to 15, that's an increase of 5, right? So 5 is what percent of the original number? Right? So notice after this comma, here's actually my question. The increase is what of? Just like all these others, except I had to figure out what the increase was, and it increased by 5. All right, let's solve this equation. Okay, so x equals 5/10, but notice this is what percent. So I've got to change that 5/10 to a percent, and this one's easy to make 100. Multiply both of them by 10, you get 50 hundredths, or 50%. Okay, now these I'll say use your estimation skills, right? So they expect you to know that 50% of something is the same thing as half of something, right? And 100% of something is like the whole thing. 200% is 2 times something. You're doubling it. 25% is 1/4 of something. So if I'm just estimating, I can just say, oh, I know this is 1/4 of that. All I have to do is say, well, what's 6,400 divided by 4? That would be 25% of it, 1/4. Okay, do your division. Nothing left over, but there's 2 zeros. So 1,600 is about 25% of 6,400. Okay, 10% and 1%. If 100% equals one whole pie, 100% of the pie, then 10%, right? That moves my decimal over, and 1%. All I have to do is think about moving the decimals. So 10% means I'm going to move the decimal over 1 time, get rid of 1 0 here. So if this is the decimal, I'd move it here. So 10% of 120 cows is about 12 cows. 1%, I'd want to get rid of both of these zeros, which means I'm moving my decimal 2 places. So is 0.59 tables, right? Since you can't have 0.9 of a table, you'd say approximately 6. Okay, let me know if you need anything.